Hello and welcome to Growing Tech Fast, the condensed Org3D podcast in which conversations about growing SaaS startups are had with those who have grown them. Now, today I'm joined by John, CEO of TrustLayer. It's great to have you on today, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'm excited. So to kick us off then, can you start by telling us who you are, what your mission is, and the work that you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, so my name is John Fohr. I'm one of the two co-founders of a company called TrustLayer. We're an InsurTech. Specifically, we've built infrastructure that allows for companies to track and validate information from their counterparties really easily. So when two companies work together, they have a whole bunch of information that they might have to share, and that is like a super painful manual process today. And we're working with some of the biggest carriers and brokers in the country to help solve it.
Oh, okay, cool. And then where did the idea of TrustLayer come from? So you and your co-founder, where did that all start?
So before I got into this, I didn't come from the insurance industry, but I came from actually in the world where you had to use insurance, like the rest of the world. And so we were working on some construction projects on the investment side. And I saw that when vendors or subcontractors were trying to get access to certain job sites, occasionally they would be delayed because they just simply weren't able to demonstrate quickly that they had the requisite insurance to getting to that point before. So if I'm going to bring a vendor into my job site or a subcontractor, or I'm going to if I ran a hotel and I'm going to have a florist come in or a caterer, they actually have to share and demonstrate that they have insurance, certain levels of insurance, in order for them to get access to the building. And it's not just with construction. It's like every property management company. It's every franchise tracking a franchisee. It's every Uber, right? It's every Airbnb. You have to validate you have got coverage. Every auto loan, every mortgage. It's like time and time again you have to like share and validate this information, and it's just all done through paper today. Yeah. And that was the pain point that I saw. And so I would see these projects get delayed, and I was just flabbergasted that it was because of a challenge of trying to prove insurance. And I thought there's just got to be a better way to do it. And then I was talking to a couple of my buddies who happen to run innovation at major insurance carriers. And they're like, yeah, this whole industry is just run on paper. And it's actually very, very challenging for us to figure out who has coverage at what time. And for that, we're building a digital proof of insurance. And so this is a gargantuan problem or opportunity, however you position it. And really, we just want to be able to allow for companies to focus on their business and not on like the admin, compliance, paperwork stuff, which you can solve with robotic process automation and AI, but is something that is vitally important, but people don't really want to spend time on it because they want to spend time on like more complex tasks.
Cool. Okay, right. That's really interesting. Okay, and over the past year, TrustLayer has doubled in size. So I just want to know what it's like to work at TrustLayer.
Well, so I mean, I guess over the last year and a half, we probably like 10x in size. So before the pandemic started, we had, I think, 3 or 4 employees, and now we just had we're north of 40 now, and it's like every fast growing startup, right? We were fortunate enough we closed a pretty good Series A and a pretty good seed round, and then we just recently closed our Series A as well, led by Craft Ventures. And so it's like your regular rocket ship. At the same time, you also have good days, right? I mean, it's like every startup, you have good days and bad days, right? It's like, hell, you have like good minutes and bad minutes, right? You're on top of the world. You're on top of the world at 1 p.m. and then like everything's falling apart at 2 p.m. and then like you're back up on at 3. I mean, I think it's a kind of a standard roller coaster in that way.
Of course, it keeps you on your toes, though.
Yeah, it does. Building a startup during the pandemic is certainly challenging, because we're trying to get more people into the office, but at the same time, over the last year, we've just had to hire remote, and that's incredible because we get rock star folks from around the world. Mm-hmm. At the same time, how do you build culture when it's a completely remote, so not completely remote, but like we have a little office now, but trying to build culture in a remote environment is certainly challenging. And it's funny when I meet other founders of other Series A companies, 9 times out of 10, hell, 99 times out of 100 probably, we're not talking about, well, tell me about your go-to-market strategy, or tell me about this like one like niche, or it's like, how are you building a great culture in your company? And that's the reoccurring conversation that comes up with almost every founder I talk to. It's really, really tough, and it needs to be done, or especially when you have a competitive environment like it is today with hiring tier one team.
Of course. Yeah, that makes total sense. And going off that then, now you've been through all this and the pandemic is still there, but it's sort of getting better. Is there anything you do differently if you got the chance?
Oh, what I would do differently with the startup? Oh my God, how long do you guys have? This is one of these like Joe Rogan, like 4-hour podcasts, right?
Well,
oh yeah, like settle in, listeners. Yeah, there's a lot that we would have done differently. What with regard to like what we're doing now, which is different, is we just have the capacity where up until now with building the team, building culture, things were just like, they just happened. Like it was, some of it might have been somewhat forced. Like remember when everyone was having their like the Zoom happy hours? Oh my God, those were the worst, right? But like they were still like they were a little bit forced, but actually it turned out for us like we were doing them just because we wanted to catch up with other members of the team. But once you get past like 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, having like that many boxes on the screen is not a great, like no one can talk. It's just not a great experience. So we really need to be that much more deliberate in what we're doing. And this is something that we're now dedicating. Well, I mean, we'll have a full-time person dedicated to like, how do you build community and culture within the company? Yeah. Because this is not something that's just like a nice to have. This is something that's vital for our success.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And then when it comes to overcoming failure within a startup and kind of getting past hurdles, let's say, is there any sort of particular moments that's triggered a change in your thinking or approach to startup life?
Yeah. So one of the, I would say, I don't know if it was failure, but something like one of the challenges we had earlier on was we would get a lot of, so two things. One, some of our earliest customers tended not to be necessarily indicative of the broader market. In that, like, we would get very, very excited, like early stage like some of our earliest customers, but it was unclear if, like, at the time we thought it was like representative of the broader market. And then we found out that ultimately it wasn't. So it was just a good data point for me of like, make sure like your sample size is large enough, because it's possible you might have like kind of a narrow sample size. So that was helpful. And then the second thing that came up is the challenges with doing business with enterprise customers. And so trying to balance where you are in the journey and your size with the size of the customer. So it's great when like Fortune 500 companies express an interest in wanting to work with you. It sounds great, right? Venture funds love it. It seems really exciting. You get some big dollar signs. But like, it's certainly challenging to sometimes, you really got to dedicate meaningful resources to it. So we just got approved from a couple of months ago, we got approved by a large bank, and which is exciting, to work with them. But at the same time, it's like, oh my goodness, like that is it just introduces like a number of unique challenges that of course large enterprise customers want or expect that their vendors can provide. And so making sure you're at the right, like your life cycle is meeting this stage that they would expect, or you're at the right stage to go after those larger customers.
Yeah.
I know that was definitely a challenge, and like trying to pick that off maybe too early was something that we did. Thankfully it worked out, but it certainly required a lot of resources from our team. Plus you had to go through SOC 2 and all this, all the other compliance stuff, which is, good, but it certainly requires like dedicated resources to it.
For sure. Absolutely. Okay. And have there been what have the lowest and highest moments been in your startup career? Because I imagine there's a huge mix of both.
I think like one of the most memorable moments was when we started having people with like really, really good jobs, like either reach out to us to work with us, or before early on when they agreed to leave their jobs to work with us. And we're like, we at the time we might have only had like 6 months of runway or something, right? This is before we got financed, before we got like real outside financing. And it was like, oh my God, like people are really into it. And then in a similar spot, before we actually built the product, we had like mock-ups and Figmas and wireframes. And we went to a handful of prospective customers and we said, like, here you go. Like, would this kind of fit? And they're like, that's great. Can we, pay for that? And at the time we were like, no, you can't pay for that. This is like a wireframe. This is like a mock-up. This is like, we need to actually like build this thing. But again, it was just like that excitement of being like, oh my God, like this might be a really neat opportunity that we can be positioned to run with. As far as like low moments, I mean, it's when that like the one contract doesn't come through, or like the one person you're chasing to join the team, like, ends up realizing that they're golden handcuffs, they still have golden handcuffs. So there's a bunch of like little road bumps that pop up with any journey, but like, I don't know, just having the right team around you and having like the right support network. So like when you do hit that like pothole, knowing that you've got a team around you that can help pick you up is vital. And that's really what it comes down to, right? It just, like I'm one person, my co-founder who's awesome, but only one person. So like figuring out how you can build that team is the most important thing.
Yeah, I guess having that support system around you is integral in any case, but especially in kind of the startup world, I imagine is super, super important. So it's great that you have that going on. And I know 2021 has been a great year for TrustLayer in particular. As you said earlier, you announced your Series A funding. I mean, that's a great achievement, but I'm guessing there were some hurdles along the way of getting that funding.
Yeah, of course, right? I'll tell you what was difficult is raising our seed round, or like, the very, very first dollar in. Once you kind of can start demonstrating traction and you've got a bunch of fancy names behind you, it becomes a whole lot easier raising capital. But the challenges change. There's no better time probably right now to be an entrepreneur. There's so many great investors that are out there, and being able to show traction and I think that's really changed a lot in the last 6 months, maybe in the last like 8 months or 9 months, where rounds are just being done that much earlier. Like what I thought was a seed round, or even like a pre-seed round almost, like a couple years ago. Now some people are, maybe not pre-seed, but like a seed round. People are raising Series A's. So to that, like there's just such a level of excitement around SaaS, and that you've got private investors that are eager to invest. One thing we did, which was, I'm really, really proud of this, was we happen to have like a fancy venture fund that led both our last two rounds. But we ended up bringing in a lot of the industry that we were within. Again, we're an InsurTech, right? So we're building infrastructure for the insurance industry. Very sexy topic. And that said, though, so we knew that we were going to work really closely with brokers, insurance brokers. And so we brought in a fancy venture fund to lead the round, but then we filled the round with, at this point now, we have over 20 some of the top 100 brokers actually as investors in TrustLayer. And so that was really helpful because I knew that there's undoubtedly, like, we've made a whole bunch of mistakes, and I'm going to, probably going to make a whole bunch of mistakes, in the future. But as we're going through our journey, having like the biggest players in the industry at your back supporting you is vital, because it means that we can stay like front of mind for a lot of these brokers. And it also means that I can get support and like guidance from so many of the C-level, like the C-suites within the larger brokers within the industry.
Amazing. Okay. And when it comes to personal development throughout this journey, have you seen any significant changes in your own personal development?
Yeah, great question. So trying to remove myself from actually getting my hands dirty and doing it myself, and realizing that instead of me doing something, the right solution is for me to create the process to allow for someone else to do that. So every time where I'm like, I could do this in like 10 minutes. Yeah. Instead, it's going to take me like 30 minutes. But if I can like get someone else to do it, and like give away that part of my my role, that's way better for the company longer term. So the goal is not just to like get a job done today, but actually to build the infrastructure and the process so that it can be done like in a more sustainable longer term way. We read I don't remember who first referenced this book, but or this blog article. But if you haven't read it, Giving Away Your Legos, I thought is it just and you can just Google it, just Giving Away Your Legos. It's the journey from like going from 40 people to 60 people, right? And realizing that so many people on the team that are individual contributors, early on, you got all the stuff you're doing, and the folks at an earlier stage startup that are like really, really successful are the ones that can like give away their jobs. And I forget whether it's like every 4 or every 6 months, you should just assume you'll have a completely different job at the company. And that's pretty close to what it is here. So people that were doing completely different work 6 months ago are now managing teams and are not even like involved in sales processes anymore, even though they might have been, in a completely different role 6 months ago, but just because we've hired and we've grown. Yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, it must be fun to be able to kind of play different parts and be able to get all that experience, I guess. Well, going on to your role models then, do you have any in particular?
Yeah. So one thing we've done at TrustLayer is for like our all hands that we have is I try to bring in founders from other companies that have been really successful that share with us primarily like the things that were not successful, because we all always remember what we've done. And so this is a pretty regular occurrence now that we'll have every week or maybe every 2 weeks, 1 or 2 people come in, and just other CEOs or founding teams or go-to-market folks that can come in and share their experience with our team. For me, like any founder is who I get excited, just like chatting with. Someone who looks at something and says like, that here's a problem and I've got an idea, I've got a solution for how to, even if it might be a harebrained solution or even if it fails, just like someone who has that level of passion, that's who I could talk to at the dinner party like all night long. I almost don't even care what the topic is, like, or what the issue is, like just like the idea and the passion of someone getting behind something really, really big and trying to solve it. For me, that's the most exciting person to talk to.
Absolutely, I agree with that, definitely. And what are some of the best bits of advice that you've been given in your career?
Oh, great question. I think it's
of a hard one.
That's it. Wow. Yeah. It's a good, take care of your team.
Yeah.
That's it. Like if you can get a group of people to be around you, whether they're your bosses or whether they're like the folks that are working with you or for you, and do everything you can to support them. And like, if you can create a really, really strong team, you can solve most problems. And just, that's what it comes down to. I'll never forget the first time this was back when I was like probably an intern, like, I don't know, 19 years old. And I completely screwed up. Like there was some project, it was like 100% my fault. I jacked that up. And I just remember like getting just berated, truthfully, rightfully so, by some like other person at the company. And just my boss, like physically moving in between me and that person. And she like, was like, this guy works for me. I'm going to take care of this. And she just like took this like barrage and just like protected me physically in this case. I just love that like her moving in between me and the guy. And then of course, like when she turned around, and like I knew I screwed up. Like everyone knew I screwed up, right? But like just like that small act just for me like cemented the relationship that I would always have for her and like the respect that I have for her. And so if you can just make sure to protect your team and like do anything you can to help them out, I think you'll end up in a really strong spot.
For sure. Okay. And going from that then, are there any bits of advice you have for someone else right at the start of starting their own company in this space other than that?
Yeah. So starting your company, I think once you're starting a company, let me take a step back. It's a similar line. It would be like, find a big problem, and then do everything you can to put the right team together to solve it. Because when you walk in, whether it's like raising capital or trying to convince that other person to join, like people know that you don't have all the answers, and they know you're going to screw up, and they know that your model is probably overly rosy that you put together. At the same time, though, they want to see that level of confidence that you have, and they want to know that when you have a problem, you're going to be dedicated, and your team's going to be dedicated to try to solve it, because you are going to hit that pothole. And so, trying to find like the absolute best team, and for me, I was really lucky because I found like an incredible co-founder to do this with, and so. When you look back and there's so much studies out there that show like co-founder conflict is one of the biggest problems, right? It just comes down to like making sure you have the right co-founder is key, and that's from a technical perspective or like an industry perspective. It also means like, is this someone that like when things get tough, they're going to be there for you? And if the answer is yes, and you guys can both support each other, then you're in a really strong spot.
Absolutely. Again, going back to that support system, I feel like is one of the most integral things in any situation. So it's great, again, that you've got that. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, John. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and really great hearing your story and getting some insight into TrustLayer and what you're all about. So awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited about it.
No worries. And for everyone listening at home, thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you next time on Growing Tech Fast.
Great. Talk to you soon.
Great.